Yes. So hello everyone, welcome back to our channel Known for Knowledge. Yes, again I think now we are on live completely. So in the before class we have actually seen about the digestion process, that is complete nutrition process. What is actually the nutrition in amoeba, the nutrition in plants, and nutrition in animals. And we have a detailed revision, and we have a detailed concepts that we have actually learned. But in this class we are actually going to learn about the respiration process. Okay, I think I have discussed all the in-text question answers as well, yes. So in this class now we are mainly going to discuss about the respiration process. So respiration process, you are going to see what are the different types of respiration that we have, that is aerobic and anaerobic mode of respiration. And the second one is the respiration in fish. So we are not going to see the detail, just we are going to see all the important things that are related to fish. Then after that we are going to see the third most important thing, that is the respiration in human beings. That is one of the most important topics where most of the questions can be asked, and I'll also try to include few questions between the sessions so that you can also get an idea and understanding about how the questions will be asked as well. So I guess so that is what I would like to tell. And now let us start with our actual session, that is the respiration. So what is actually the respiration? So respiration is nothing but the process of taking in of the oxygen in the body of an organism and utilizing it in order to gain the energy, and the process of the breaking down of the glucose in order to gain the energy is called as the respiration process. So this respiration process mainly deals with the breaking down of the glucose molecules in order to derive the energy from it. For example, if you see, so the respiration, now let us read out what is here, what is given here. So the process by which a living organism will utilize the food to get energy is called as respiration. And respiration is considered to be an oxidation reaction in which carbohydrate is oxidized to produce energy. So mitochondrion is the site of the respiration, and energy released is stored in the form of ATP molecules, that is adenosine triphosphate. And ATP is stored in mitochondria and it is released as per the needs and the growth and the development of the body. So based on the needs and the development of the body, the ATP molecules have been released. I think now you got an understanding, right? In the respiration process, first the organism will try to gain the oxygen. It will try to take the oxygen into the body of an organism, and with the help of that, it will try to break the glucose molecule into the different pyruvates. Pyruvates are nothing but the 3 carbon molecules. That is C3 is called as the pyruvate molecule. Means 3 carbon molecule is considered to be a pyruvate. It will break down into pyruvate, and then it will divide it into carbon dioxide gas and water, and energy is been formed. And the main process of the respiration is that we are going to try to gain energy. The energy is a very important process. So the main use of this respiration is to gain the energy. So that is our main target. Okay. So this respiration process will take place in both the mitochondria and the cytoplasm. So mitochondria is nothing. Mitochondria is considered to be the energy currency of the cell, wherein it will produce the energy for the new cells, for the process of making up of the new cells, for replacing the old and damaged cells, and for many other processes as well. This mitochondria is helpful, and this therefore this mitochondria is called as the energy currency, and this ATP is called as the energy currency of the cell. So mitochondria will help us in releasing of the energy in the form of ATP molecules, that is adenosine triphosphate. And now you got an understanding, right, what is actually the ATP molecule. Yes. Now let us see what are the steps which are mainly involved in the process of respiration. So before we actually go into the steps which are involved in the process of respiration, now let us try to see what are the different types of respiration that we actually have. So in our life, we have 2 types of respirations that are actually been taking place. That is, one is aerobic respiration, one is anaerobic respiration. In anaerobic respiration, we have the 2 types. That is, absence of oxygen, one respiration takes place. Another one is a lack of oxygen. Lack of oxygen is nothing but inefficient supply. Means a less amount of oxygen. There is a required amount. Means there is a certain level of amount of oxygen which is required. So beyond, if it is less than that level, then that condition is considered to be the lack of oxygen level. Okay. Now let us see this. Okay. So the respiration process, as we are discussing about it, see what are the different types of respiration. Respiration, as I already, aerobic and aerobic. Aerobic respiration is a kind of respiration wherein the glucose molecules, if you see here, this is an aerobic form of respiration. So this is a glucose, pyruvate and 3 carbon molecules and energy. Okay, so this is a presence, in the presence of oxygen, this is an aerobic mode of respiration. It is dividing the glucose. Glucose molecule is nothing but C6H12O6. That is a formula of glucose. If you see, I think I can show it here. Okay, this is more clear. Yeah. So the glucose molecule, that is C6H12O6, in the presence of oxygen, that is when you're talking about the aerobic respiration always happens in the presence of oxygen. So C6H12O6 in the presence of oxygen, that is O2, then it will give carbon dioxide, water and energy. Now let us have a detailed revision about detailed understanding about this reaction. So glucose molecule in the cytoplasm, it will form the pyruvate. Pyruvate is nothing but, this is a 3 carbon molecule. This is a 3 carbon molecule, that is C3. Just it is a 3 carbon molecules. It forms 2 molecules of 3 carbons. You can just say it will form 2 molecules of 3 carbons, or 3 carbon molecule, that is 2C3. Okay, then this is the pyruvate which is formed, and this process of breaking down of the glucose molecule into pyruvate is called as a glycolysis. That is a process, and this pyruvate molecule, as you can see here, in the presence of oxygen, this respiration is happening, that is aerobic. It is giving so this glycolysis process, that is a breaking down of glucose into pyruvate, will take place in the cytoplasm. Whereas this, the presence of breaking down of this conversion of this pyruvate to give carbon dioxide, water and energy is actually taking place. It is actually taking place in mitochondria. Mitochondria is nothing but it provides energy. Okay, and now let us try to see what is absence of oxygen. I think now we got an understanding, right? What is actually the aerobic form of respiration. Aerobic means it is nothing but in the presence of oxygen, carbon dioxide, water and energy has been released. Okay, and aerobic respiration is the only respiration wherein it takes place in both cytoplasm and mitochondria, whereas other anaerobic respiration will not take place in mitochondria, and only in cytoplasm only the respiration will take place. Okay, I think now you got an understanding, right? Let us see this. Cytoplasm is nothing but in the cell membrane some jelly-like substance is actually being present, wherein it is wherein in a jelly-like substance only all the cell organelles has been present. Like for example, you can take in the plants, if you take chloroplast, then mitochondria, then SES, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, then rough endoplasmic reticulum is there, then many mitochondria is there. All have been enclosed in this cytoplasm itself, and these all are enclosed in a cell membrane. Okay, I think now we got an understanding, right? So if you see here, this is a detailed equation. This equation is very important from the examination point of view. So glucose molecule in the presence of oxygen, this is taking place in the cytoplasm, and it is converted to pyruvate, and from pyruvate it is converted to the carbon dioxide, water and 38 ATP molecule. So if you see, this is taking place in this conversion of pyruvate to carbon dioxide is actually taking place in mitochondria. I think now you got an understanding. Now let us see what is actually the anaerobic form of respiration. In anaerobic form of respiration, we have 2 types. That is absence of oxygen, and the third form is the lack of oxygen. In the absence of oxygen, the byproducts which are formed in the absence of oxygen in the anaerobic form of respiration is the ethyl alcohol or ethanol plus carbon dioxide and energy. Ethanol is nothing but it is just alcohol. Okay, that is, its formula is C2H5OH. You can just remember its formula is C2H5OH. That is anaerobic respiration in the absence of oxygen. That is ethanol it forms. If you can see here it is given in detail. Okay, so the conversion of glucose to pyruvate is same for all the processes which is actually involved, but the conversion means the based on the based on the amount of quantity of oxygen, it is divided into ethanol, carbon dioxide, or energy based on its efficiency, based on the energy oxygen supply. It has been divided into different products. Okay, now let us try to see the pyruvate molecule. So pyruvate molecule, in the absence of oxygen, that is in the yeast, it's actually being converted into ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. Ethanol formula is C2H5OH and carbon dioxide is CO2. And energy is released in here. Only 2 ATP of energy is released. So if you see, only 2 ATP of energy is actually being released in the anaerobic respiration, whereas in aerobic respiration 38 ATP molecules, that is 38 ATP is a very large amount of energy which is actually released. Okay, then the third form of the respiration is that the lack of oxygen. In the lack of oxygen, it tries to give lactic acid and energy. Lactic acid formula is C3H6O3. If you so just you have to remember for only ethanol, that is C2H5OH, and lactic acid you can easily remember. This is because if you make glucose molecule half, that is C6H12O6. C6 is nothing but C3. So H12 is nothing H6, and O6 is nothing O3. So if you make half of the glucose molecule, you can get it. You can get the lactic acid, that is C3H6 and O3, and releases energy. And here also you can see only 2 ATP molecules of energy is actually been released. Okay, now you got a clear-cut understanding of the breaking down of glucose by various pathways. Okay, once again we'll let us revise. In aerobic form of respiration, it happens in the presence of oxygen. In the presence of oxygen, it tries to break down the glucose molecule into pyruvate. Pyruvate is a 3-carbon molecule, and this process is called as glycolysis, and it will take place in the cytoplasm. Then after that, the pyruvate molecule is being converted into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Here the energy is 38 ATP molecules of energy, and this is actually taking place in mitochondria. Okay. Then in the absence of oxygen, the entire process so you can just remember, aerobic respiration happens in both cytoplasm and mitochondria. Anaerobic respiration happens only in the cytoplasm. Okay, so in the anaerobic respiration, that is absence of oxygen, we see that glucose is converted to pyruvate by glycolysis, and after that ethanol is formed, and carbon dioxide and energy, that is 2 ATP molecules of energy is formed. Then after that, in the lack of oxygen, then it forms lactic acid and energy. Okay, this is the entire process. Now let us try to distinguish between each of them. So in the question, the most probable question which can be asked from this concept is, what is the main difference between the aerobic and the anaerobic form of respiration? Now let us try to read this. So the types of respiration aerobic. So this type of respiration happens in the presence of oxygen, and pyruvic acid is converted to carbon dioxide, energy is released, and water molecule is also formed at the end of the process. Anaerobic respiration, this type of respiration will happen in the absence of oxygen, and pyruvic acid is either converted to ethyl alcohol or lactic acid, and ethyl alcohol is usually formed in the case of anaerobic respiration, that is microbes are being formed. I think now you got an understanding, right? What is the main process? Yes. And now let me make a distinguish between each of them. The first very important point that you have to mention between aerobic and anaerobic mode. Aerobic mode of respiration, in aerobic mode, the glucose molecule is completely oxidized in order to form the carbon dioxide, water, and energy, you can mention. Then in anaerobic respiration, for that point, glucose oxidizing, the glucose is incompletely oxidized and forms ethyl alcohol, lactic acid, and energy only. Okay, then one more important point, very important point, is that second point, the amount of energy which is actually released in aerobic form of respiration is very much greater, that is 38 ATP molecule, whereas in the amount of energy released in the anaerobic respiration is only 2 ATP molecule. That is, therefore the energy released is very less as compared to that released in anaerobic respiration is very less as compared to that of the anaerobic aerobic respiration has more energy released as compared to that of the anaerobic respiration. Okay, and that is the second point. And third point is that in aerobic respiration, if you see, the water molecule is formed, whereas in anaerobic respiration water molecule is not formed. This is the third point you can mention. And the fourth important point that you can actually mention is about the cytoplasm mitochondria. In aerobic respiration takes place in both cytoplasm and mitochondria, whereas anaerobic respiration takes place only in cytoplasm. And fifth point, you can mention any example. So in aerobic respiration takes place in plants and animals, human beings and everything. Whereas anaerobic respiration will actually take place in different organisms. For example, in the absence of oxygen, the fermentation process as well. So let me read out, this is very important process. In the fermentation process, this anaerobic respiration will actually take place because yeast and some other bacteria will actually show anaerobic respiration, because anaerobic respiration microorganisms present in food and alcohol will actually cause a fermentation. So the most well-known example of fermentation is seen in the production of wine and beer. Okay. Anaerobic respiration also takes place in the muscles. So that is for ethanol. That is for anaerobic respiration in the absence of oxygen. Fermentation process, that is yeast and alcohol, you can take for absence of oxygen. For the lack of oxygen, you have to take better good example is muscle cramps. If you see muscle cramps also, this during heavy weightlifting also, what happened, very heavy weightlifting, or during when we are doing a lot of exercises as well. So during that time as well, we try to see that there is an less oxygen which is actually present in our body. So during that time, there is a lack of oxygen situation is actually being created. So during that time, the lactic acid is being produced using muscle cramps, or when we have to produce, when we are actually doing a lot of exercises as well. So during that time, we try to see that anaerobic respiration in the lack of oxygen, that situation is actually being formed. I think now you got a clear understanding, right? Okay, and I have, as I already told you, and while at the end of the session as well, try to make out the difference between the aerobic and anaerobic respiration as well. Okay. And the accumulation of the lactic acid in the muscles also causes fatigue and pain, and you might get some relief from pain after a hot water bath or a massage or some kind of thing. And finally, lactic acid is completely broken down into carbon dioxide and water by aerobic respiration, as shown in the following. Okay, as you can see in the following equations. Okay, now let us study about what is actually the ATP molecule. So energy released during the cellular respiration is immediately used to synthesize the molecule called as ATP. So this ATP a molecule is used to fuel all other activities. It is used as a fuel. As you can see, fuel is very important for running any vehicle or any engine or anything. So ATP will act as a fuel in activating all the different activities in our body. Means ATP is like very important, right? It is a base, and it is like a very important process, a very important molecule which is important for providing of energy into all the body parts, to all the energy and to all our activities as well. So ATP is broken down, giving rise to a fixed amount of energy which can derive the endothermic reactions taking place in the cell. Now what you can understand, respiration is always an exothermic process, because there is actually a releasing of the energy which is actually been taking place. Therefore respiration is considered to be an exothermic process. That means when there is an evolution of energy which is actually being created, that is called as an exothermic process. Then ATP molecule. ATP molecule is an energy currency for most of the cells. So the energy released during the process of respiration is used to make an ATP molecule from ADP and inorganic phosphate. So ATP molecule is actually being formed from the inorganic phosphate and adenosine diphosphate, that is ADP. So when ADP and inorganic phosphate, they combine together, they form the ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate. So this adenosine triphosphate is equivalent to 30.5 kilojoules per mole is being released at once. So this one just you can remember. And respiration is an exothermic process, and many of the activities in our body will actually with the help of the will actually take place with the endothermic reactions. But this is because see, they need energy in order to perform different tasks as well. Like for example, for the digestion process and everything also, we try to see that we need energy. Okay, so during that reactions also we try to see that we try to see the endothermic process for not only digestion, also other processes are also there, wherein endothermic process is endothermic reactions are being used, wherein they take the energy in order to supply the raw materials, in order to give energy, in order to supply in order to do many other life processes and activities. Also energy is required, so ATP is very important. And ATP is used for the contraction of the muscles, protein synthesis, conduction of nervous impulses, and many other activities are also being performed by ATP molecule. So since aerobic respiration pathway depends upon oxygen, anaerobic respiration needs to ensure that there is a sufficient intake of oxygen as well. So we have seen that plants will also exchange the gases through stomata, and the large intercellular spaces will actually ensure that all the cells are in contact with the air converts. So respiration plants also we are going to see. Before we go into the respiration plants, let us see. I think now you got an understanding, right? You're running in legs during the cramp situation also this is used. Okay. So if you want to let me read out. So when someone runs too fast, he may experience a throbbing pain in the leg muscles. So this happens because of the anaerobic respiration taking place in the muscles. So during running, the energy demand from the muscle cells increases. So this is actually compensated by anaerobic respiration. Lactic acid is formed in the process. So the decomposition of lactic acid produces the pain in the leg muscles. The pain subsides after taking some rest or some hot bath or anything. I think now we got an understanding, right, what is actually the main process which is involved here in this respiration, right? Now let us try to understand how the exchange of gases. Now we have seen the exchange of gases, how it is taking place in human beings. This is not completely done. We are going to see how the lungs are being performed, everything that is aside. Now let us try to see what are the exchange of gases, how it is actually being taking place in exchange of gases in plants, how it is actually taking place. In plants, the exchange of gases is actually being taking place in three main important steps. So let me three main important steps, that is in the roots, stems, and the leaves. So three main important organs of the plants are there, wherein they play a very important role in the exchange of gases. Okay. So in the roots, if you see, so let us start with the leaves. In the leaves, if you see, the respiration will happen with the help of the guard cells. So these guard cells will have the chloroplast and the stomatal pores, which will help in the easy exchange of gases within, and they are easily in contact with the atmosphere. That they can easily with a simple process of diffusion, they can actually help in the exchange of the gases. The diffusion process will not require any of the energy, and they can easily transform the energy in the leaves. So we try to understand that. The three main important things are there, in the leaves, in the roots, and in the stems. So first we are going to see about the leaves. In the leaves, you see that guard cells play a very important role in the exchanging of the gases. Okay, and in this respiration in plants will actually take place 24/7, whereas the photosynthesis process will only take place in the presence of sunlight. So when there is only sunlight, only sunlight also, this respiration process will take place. Whereas this photosynthesis will only take place during the time of sunlight, whereas respiration takes place all throughout the time, during day and night. And you might be wondering why the respiration process will take place in plants as well. Yes, respiration takes place in both plants and animals as well. So exchange of gases will actually take place. For aerobic respiration, organisms need a continuous supply of oxygen and carbon dioxide producing the processes needs to be removed from the body. So different organisms will use different intake processes for the plants. So in plants, if you say diffusion process is actually being utilized for the exchanging of the gases. And excretion also, for the process of excretion also, they use a diffusion process only. And for the respiratory system, does the job of exchange of gases, and gills are the respiratory organs for fishes, and fishes take in the oxygen which is dissolved in water and through gills. Since availability of oxygen is quite less in aquatic environment, so the breathing rate of aquatic organisms is faster. So insects will have a system of spiracles and trachea, which, okay, let's come to that in a later point of time. Now let us try to see the exchange of gases in plants. Okay, they are not mentioned in detail. So let me give a detailed view about this entire thing. So now let us see the respiration in plants. As I already told, in leaves the stomata or the stomata or the guard cells play very important role in exchanging of the gases, and the main functions which are used are for the transpiration process, that is a loss of water from the aerial parts of the plant, that is from the guard cells only the from the roots the water will actually come to the leaves, wherein that loss of water will actually take place. So that is actually performed by guard cells. Second important point is the exchanging of the gases. So these are the two main important processes which are actually being performed by the guard cells. I think now you got a clear-cut understanding, right? Yes. Now let us see about the diffusion process. Now I think you got an understanding about leaves, how the respiration will actually take place in leaves. Okay. Now let us see how the respiration will actually take place in roots. So if you see the roots will have the root hairs. Okay. So these root hairs will have the concentration gradient. Will have the root hairs. So in the soil, if you see, there is a air which is actually been trapped inside this soil. So this air will actually pass on to the root hairs, and from the root hairs it will pass to the entire plant, or the entire different parts of the plant. So that is a simple thing in the roots. So exchange of gases in the roots takes place by the process of diffusion. So there is actually some air which is actually present between the spaces of the plants. So that air is actually being transformed. So with the help of that. The air is actually being transformed to the root hairs. Root hairs are nothing but, I'll try to show the picture. So this here, here if you see, these have some small finger-like projections, small finger-like which cannot be seen. Those root hairs are actually present. So these root hairs, some air is actually present in the soil. They'll try to capture the air and they'll try to use it for the different life processes. Okay. In the similar way, the nitrogen is also being utilized by the plants, wherein it is converted into nitrites and nitrates, and it is used by the plants. Okay, that is root hairs, roots. With the help of the root hairs, that is the diffusion process. Means some kind of difference in the air in the root hairs and the soil particles is created. So that difference is actually created. Therefore, it will transform the air to the root hairs, and from that, it will the air has been transported to all the parts of the plant. That is a root. Okay, from root hairs it will go to the secondary roots. From secondary roots, so these are called secondary roots, and the primary roots are here. This is the primary root. Okay, root hairs are very small. So here you can see the root hairs, and after that these are the secondary roots, and this will go to the primary roots. Okay, and in the stem, sometimes with the help of the lenticels. So lenticels are also nothing but they are some small holes which are pores are some holes which are actually present, wherein the respiration process will actually take place. Whereas in herbaceous plants, some herbaceous plants will be there, wherein the stem is also in green color only. So they have the stomata, and with the help of the stomata, the exchange of gases will take place. Whereas in some woody stems, some of the plants, some of the trees will have some hard stem. So those plants are called as woody stems. In those plants, with the help of the lenticels, the exchanging of the gases will actually take place. In the woody stems, the gases exchange occurs through the small pores found on the stems called as the lenticels. Whereas in herbaceous plants, it takes place with the help of the exchanging of the gases. I think now you've got a clear understanding about how the respiration will actually take place in plants, and what are the different types of respiration that we have actually been seen now. Okay. Now let us try to see. And okay, let me ask you a question. Okay, so so during the night time, so which processes are taking place more, the respiration or the photosynthesis process? Of course, it is that if they ask this kind of question, I give reason means you have to say respiration process will take place, because respiration process will take place irrespective of the sunlight, chlorophyll or anything. Okay, whereas photosynthesis requires sunlight, chlorophyll and all the required conditions. Whereas respiration does not require anything. Therefore, respiration process will take place easily during the daytime, during the night time, sorry. And during the daytime, both the processes will take place simultaneously. Okay, and if they ask a question wherein if you see a cloudy kind of a weather, which process will take place more, the photosynthesis or the respiration process? The respiration process will take place more, because the photosynthesis process is mainly dependent on the sunlight. So if there is a less sunlight, then less photosynthesis which will occur. So this is also one kind of question which is asked. Okay, now next important point is respiration in animals. In respiration in animals, we try to focus mainly upon fish, because mainly questions have also been asked about only about a fish as fish only. So these rules, okay. So let us see what is the respiration in animals. After that, let's go to the respiration in human beings. Okay. So in respiration in animals, the respiration. So we have 5 different parts. That is respiration through the moist skin, respiration through the cell membrane, respiration through the air holes or the spiracles, and respiration through the gills, and respiration through the lungs. So these are 5. So each animal is having its own specialized organ to perform the respiration process. For example, in the respiration through the moist skin, in the earthworms, when the skin is in direct contact with the atmosphere, so with the help of that, they can easily exchange the gases as well. So frogs also use lungs, but when they are on the land they use lungs, but when they are in the water they try to, with the help of the moist skin, they try to get the oxygen and everything. So the oxygen will diffuse to the moist skin and will enter the blood vessels. Okay, let me show the picture. In earthworm, this respiration process will actually take place. Okay, earthworms and frogs. Okay, then the respiration through the cell membrane. The unicellular organisms like amoeba, paramecium will take in oxygen, give out carbon dioxide through the cell membrane. Or the simple diffusion process, you can tell, wherein the exchange of gases will actually take place in with the cell membrane. Okay, second is third is with the help of the air holes or the spiracles. So they'll have some. So if you see cockroaches and everything, they have the spiracles. For example. You see here, so these are the spiracles which are actually present. So which are present on they are called as the air holes, called as the spiracles are present on insects such as grasshoppers and cockroaches. Air will enter the insect body through the spiracles and they'll carry down through the help of the tracheal tubes. Tracheal tubes, I'll come to that point because we have not yet entered the human beings. Okay. And then after that, the respiration through the gills. So the respiration through the gills is very, very important. Now let us discuss respiration through the lungs. After that, I'll come to gills. Respiration through the lungs will take place in all the multicellular, all the important complex organisms like dogs, human beings, animals, most of the animals. This with the help of lungs, the respiration process will actually take place also. Okay, I think in detail we are going to discuss about the respiration process in lungs and everything, so you get a clear-cut understanding as well. So you have to not worry about it. Okay. One minute, let me check if the live is going on properly or not. No disturbance has actually been created. So this is my first time that I'm doing the live, or I get confused. So let me check if everything is going on properly or not. I think you can see my screen, right? Yes. Yes. Now let's discuss it. Okay, now respiration in animals, when you're discussing the respiration through the gills, we have to discuss. So respiration through the gills is very, very important from the examination point of view as well. This is because, now let us see how the respiration actually take place in gills. Okay, so the most aquatic organisms have a specialized lungs, you can say, which are called as gills. Use gills for breathing. So gills are capable of deriving the oxygen from the water, and gills are richly supplied with the blood vessels for the exchanging of the gases. So why the respiration? So if you see that rate of respiration in the aquatic organisms is faster as compared to the rate of respiration in the human beings or in animals or the land animals, you can see. So this is because if you see the amount of oxygen that is actually present in the atmosphere is 21%, as you're all aware about it. But the amount of oxygen that is dissolved in water is only it is less than 1%. Therefore, the organisms have to breathe faster in order to derive the oxygen from the water. Therefore, that is the main reason why the rate of oxygen the rate of respiration is quite relatively more. So since the amount of dissolved oxygen is actually fairly low in air, in water, the rate of breathing in aquatic organisms is much faster, seen that in the terrestrial organisms. The fishes will take in water through the mouths and force it to pass through their gills, where the dissolved oxygen is taken up by the blood. Okay, so terrestrial organisms will use the oxygen which is in the atmosphere for respiration processes. Okay, and all the organs have the structure that increases the surface area which is in contact with the oxygen rich atmosphere. So since the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide has to take place across the surface, this surface is very fine and delicate. In order to protect it, the surface, it is usually placed within the body, so there have to be passages that will take place the air to this area. Okay, this is the entire process that we now. I think now we have understood about that what is actual process which is involved in the gills as well. Now let us try to understand the main important thing, that is the respiration in human beings. This is one of the important concepts that we have to learn. Okay, so let me show a picture. Okay, now you're getting this. So nasal cavity. So nasal cavities. First, the respiration in human beings will start with the nasal cavity. Nasal cavity mainly involves the nose and the nostrils. Okay, so these nose and the nostrils okay, let's do one thing. I'll try to define everything, how the air will also pass, and after that we are going to see what are the ribs and how the ribs are being involved and everything. Let me give a function about each and every part, and after that we'll go in detail about how the air will pass and how the ribs and the diaphragm are being involved in this as well. Okay, so after that we'll go into the deep end, and after that we'll go to the breathing mechanism. Okay, first let us see. Let me explain each and every part. So in the nasal cavity is actually being present. Okay, so let me check the live actually once again. Okay, now let us try to see. So nasal cavity, it will mainly consist of nose and nostrils. So the nose has a capacity in order to take the air. So this nose will actually have the olfactory receptors. So the tongue will have the gustatory receptors, and nose will have the olfactory receptors which will used in smell. But they are not important now. In next chapter, this control and coordination, they are important. Okay. Now let us try to see in nasal cavity. Nasal cavity, we try to see that we have the nose and the nostrils. So the air is actually being taken with the help of the nose. In the nasal cavity, the air is actually being moistened, it is actually being filtered, and it is also warmed. So all these three important processes will actually take place in nasal cavity. If you see the nose as well, in nose we have the small hair like projections which are actually present in the nose. So these hair like projections and the mucus which is present in the nose are very, very important in the purification and the filtration of the air as well. So that is performed by the nose with the help of mucus. So that is the main reason that it is always preferred that we should always breathe through the nose and not through the mouth, because the mouth will not have any kind of a barrier which will actually filter the air. There is the air is directly taken in the body of an organism. Okay, whereas from the nasal cavity, the air is actually moistened, it is warmed, and it is also filtered. Because these are the important things. Okay, that is performed by the nasal cavity. And after the nasal cavity, the air will actually pass on to the pharynx. So pharynx, it is like a rectangular chamber. It is like something like rectangular chamber. Not much functions which are mainly involved for pharynx, so not much required as well. So pharynx, if you see, it will carry the air. Then it will carry the air down the nose and the mouth and allows the air to pass through the windpipe. So from the pharynx it will pass on to the epiglottis. So between the pharynx, actually it is not mentioned here, so between the pharynx and the larynx there is one more important opening which is actually present, called as the epiglottis. So this epiglottis will actually help us in the opening and the closing of the air. So this is because when we actually take the food, this is when you actually take the food, this epiglottis is being closed, so that this will not so that the food is not entered into the air passage, so that it will protect the epiglottis will actually protect the air passage, because it will not allow the food to enter into it. Okay, that is larynx. Okay, and then opening of the pharynx into the larynx is guarded by the epiglottis. So between pharynx and larynx, the epiglottis is present, and larynx is called as a voice box because it produces sound. Okay, so this will close opening while swallowed food and keeps it on during the breathing. Okay, so while during the process of breathing, this is kept open, whereas during the process of eating the food, this epiglottis is kept closed, so that the food particles will not enter into the air passage. As you can see, sometimes also we try to see that air passage is actually being blocked with some kind of food, and we feel some kind of irritation as well. So that kind of disturbance is sometimes created when the food particles will actually enter into the larynx, enter into the air passage. Okay, it comes to the mouth as well. Sometimes the food particles will actually come to the nose as well. Sometimes during vomiting or anything as well. Okay. After that, so first nasal cavity, next pharynx, next epiglottis, next larynx. Then fifth one is a trachea. In trachea, we try to see that it is guarded by the air passage. So the main function of the trachea is that it is a windpipe. Okay, so this windpipe is actually situated. It has a C-shaped rings of cartilage. If you see here as well, so it has some C-shaped rings of cartilage. There are around 15 to 16 in number actually. So this will actually help us in not collapsing the air passage. So they help us in protecting the air passage, so that it will not allow some kind of disturbance to be created. So that is main function of trachea. That means it has a C-shaped cartilages, rings of cartilage, which is actually helpful in preventing the collapsing of the air passage. In preventing the collapsing of the air passage, this is a very, very important process. I think I got an understanding, right? Yes. That is performed by trachea. And fifth one is so this trachea will mainly divide into two things, that is called as a bronchi. So bronchi, this will lead to two structures called as bronchi, one to the left and one to the right lung. Okay, so this bronchi will again further divide into few small structures called as bronchioles, and these bronchioles will have some finger-like small, very, very small, minute air-like structures called as alveoli. So the bronchi will divide so the trachea will divide into bronchi, and the bronchi will divide into bronchioles, and bronchioles will divide into alveoli. Okay, now you got an understanding, right? And these alveoli are very, 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 very important, because they are the ones which will actually help in exchanging of the gases in and out of the body of an organism. Therefore, this alveoli is very, very, very important. Therefore, they are active, and there are some air-like structures which are actually present, which will help in the exchanging of the gases. Okay, I got an understanding, right? We cover everything. Okay. So alveoli is composed of very thin membrane. It is placed over where the blood capillaries open. This is alveolus, where oxygen mixes with the blood and carbon dioxide exists from the blood, and the exchange of gases in alveoli takes place due to pressure differential. Okay. So then diaphragm is a membrane which will separate the thoracic chamber from the abdominal cavity. Where diaphragm moves down, the lungs expand. And okay, now let us try to see what is actually the entire process of breathing mechanism. So one breath will mainly involve one exhalation and one inhalation. That is considered to be one breath. Okay, now let us have a detailed understanding about this. I think got an understanding like pharynx, epiglottis, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, then lips, then lungs, and then move on to the lungs is nothing but entire process. Okay, then diaphragm, it will divide the stomach from the rest of the body, and it is a kind of a very thin membrane which is actually present. Then the mechanism of the gaseous exchange in human beings. In human beings, it is the inspiration and expiration takes place. Not that inspiration which you get motivation on that inspiration. Inspiration is nothing inhaling of the air, and inspiration is nothing but exhaling of the. Inspiration is inhalation, and expiration is exhalation. So one breath will make up one inhalation plus one exhalation. That will make up one breath. I think now you got an understanding, right, of everything. Now let us see the three main important process. First, the inhalation process. So while we actually inhale the air, you try to see for yourself. When we try to inhale the air, we try to see that the ribs, the size of the ribs is actually been increasing. If you see, some kind of a vacuum is actually being created in our body. Something, so during the process of inhalation, all the excess of air is actually being removed, and some kind of vacuum situation is created. So air is taken into the body from organisms, the tonsil, it is filtered and held by the mucus. Air will pass on to the trachea, then the chest cavity will become larger because of the flattened diaphragm and lifted ribs. So the lips are being lifted. So while we are inhaling the air, the ribs are actually being lifted, means their size increases, and it will actually flatten the diaphragm. Okay, then expansion of the chest cavity will, so when you expand the chest cavity, it will create some sort of a vacuum. So this vacuum, the vacuum is actually being created because all the kind of air will exhale out. So this creates some vacuum. So air is sucked into the lungs and it will fill the expanded alveoli. So what happens is that the air which is actually being sucked out of the body during the process of inhalation, what happens is, so the vacuum which is actually, so while exhaling of the air, some vacuum is actually being created. So it has to fill that vacuum. So while the inhalation process will go on, so it will fill the expanded alveoli, and it will help in supplying of the oxygen to the alveoli. So how the actual exchanging of gas will actually take place in alveoli? If you see, you'll learn this in the transportation chapter, wherein I think you got it. So wherein heart is a major organ which helps in the purification of the blood, because the blood from different parts of the body is taken to the heart, and from heart it is taken to the lungs. Okay, from the lungs. See, whenever we are trying to mention the deoxygenated or the impure blood, it means that it is mixed with carbon dioxide. That blood is considered to be the deoxygenated or the impure blood. So that kind of a blood is actually being transported to the lungs. In the lungs, what happens is, I'm going to tell now. In the lungs, what happens is that, so this alveoli will have it is surrounded by some blood capillaries. So this blood capillary, so now you tell me, so the blood is rich in carbon dioxide, blood surrounding the alveoli. Alveoli is rich in oxygen gas, because while the process of inhalation, alveoli got oxygen. So during that time, with the process of diffusion, alveoli will get the carbon dioxide gas, and as oxygen gas from the alveoli gets shifted to the blood. So that is the main process. Oxygen is taken up by the blood from the alveoli to the blood vessels, and blood releases the carbon dioxide into alveoli that it brings from the whole body. And hemoglobin is also very, very important in supplying of the oxygen to different parts of the body, and it also supplies to the places where oxygen cannot travel as well. And hemoglobin is considered to the respiratory pigment is the hemoglobin only. Okay, oxygen is then transported to all the cells in the body by respiratory pigment, and due to the diffusion pressure, again the same process it goes on repeat. So now as I told you, so alveoli has oxygen, blood has carbon dioxide. Exchanging actually taking place wherein the blood will now get the oxygen gas. Now again the blood comes to the heart, and from heart it moves to the all the parts of the body. So that is a process which is mainly involved in this. Okay. Okay, now you got an understanding right about the entire process of the diffusion process and everything. Now let us try to read out what is given exhalation process. Let us see. During exhalation, carbon dioxide is transported to the, so as we can now alveoli is having the carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide is actually being pushed out from the lungs and from the body. Carbon dioxide passes to the alveoli. When chest cavity is compressed due to the relaxation of, so while you're actually inhaling the air, the chest cavity, so the ribs will actually the size of the ribs will increase, whereas during the exhalation the size of the ribs will decrease. Okay, so chest cavity is compressed, means size will decrease because of the relaxation of the ribs and the diaphragm, and air is forced out of the lungs to the atmosphere. So this is the main process which is mainly involved. And the blood's affinity, so mixing capability of the molecules in blood is called as the blood's affinity, and carbon dioxide is more and oxygen is always less. Okay, now let us see what is deoxygenated and oxygenated blood is nothing but NCERT. Okay. And hemoglobin is considered to be the respiratory pigment. Now let us try to see what is actually given in the textbook so that you don't miss out any. So the rings of cartilage are present in the throat. This will actually ensure that air passages do not collapse. See, you can get a clear understanding. This is surrounded by some blood capillaries, so wherein the exchanging of the gases will actually take place. Okay. So let us read this entire thing and understand, and let us solve some questions. So with this our topic will be completed as well, and we can also end the session as well. Okay. So within the lungs, the passage divides into smaller and smaller tubes, which finally terminates into a balloon-like structures, which are called as alveoli. So alveoli will provide a surface where the exchange of gases will actually take place. So the walls of the alveoli will contain some extensive network of blood vessels. So as you have seen earlier, when we breathe in, we lift our ribs. So as you can see, we will actually lift our ribs, as I already told you, and flatten our diaphragm, and the chest cavity becomes larger as a result. And the air is sucked into the lungs and fills the expanded alveoli, and the blood brings the carbon dioxide from the rest of the body for a release into the alveoli. And oxygen, which is alveolar air, is taken up by the blood in the alveolar blood vessels, is transported to the to all the cells in the body. And during the breathing cycle, when air is actually taken in and out, the lungs also contains it. So very important. This question is actually asked in a recent board exam. The set is 32/2/1 and 2 and only one. I think this question was, what is the residual volume of air? See, what happens is that during the process of expiration, during the process of inhalation and exhalation, the entire oxygen is not, carbon dioxide is not taken up from the body, and entire oxygen is not given. Some kind of oxygen is actually being left out in the body. So a very little amount of oxygen is actually left. So that amount of oxygen is considered to be the residual. This is very important because this is very important because see, it will not take place in a very quickly, because of course it takes place quickly, but during the fraction of second as well, our body needs the supply of oxygen as well. So during that time also we need the supply of oxygen. That's why the entire air is being not removed from the body. So not like we are going to take some vacuum cleaner and not we are going to pull out the entire air. It's not like that. We're going to take the sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed. So so the lungs will contain the residual volume of air, wherein there's sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed and for the carbon dioxide to be released. So in the body size of animals is large, the diffusion pressure alone cannot take care of oxygen delivered to all the parts. Instead, respiratory pigments take up the oxygen from the air in the lungs and carry it to the tissues which are deficient in oxygen before releasing it. In human beings, the respiratory pigment is hemoglobin, which has a very high affinity for oxygen. This pigment is actually present in the red blood corpuscles, and carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than oxygen, and hence it is transported in the dissolved form in our blood. I think now we got an understanding, right? And if the alveolar surfaces were spread out, actually it would cover around 80 meters square. That means it is a size of around how much big you can just calculate. So consider how efficient exchange of gases becomes because of the large surface area available for the exchange of gases to take place. So if diffusion where to move oxygen in our body, it is estimated that it would take 3 years for a molecule of oxygen to get from our toes to get to our toes from lungs. Then you try to understand if you diffusion process will actually take place. Diffusion is a very slow process as well. So then that's the reason diffusion process is not possible in a complex organism wherein they have a huge energy, wherein they have a high supply of oxygen, wherein they are in the need of high supply of oxygen, and they also require a lot of amount of oxygen, are into oxygen as well. So now let us solve these questions, and after this, tomorrow we are going to see transportation. After that, we are going to see excretion. We are going to close this chapter. Okay, and after that I'll try to I'll make sure to see, I'll start with social. Okay, social, try to see political parties will try to complete, and after political parties I'll try to see, okay, let us see after that. Okay, now after that, afterwards let us see, let us complete these questions so that okay. So what advantage over an aquatic organism has does a over an aquatic organism does a terrestrial organism have with regard to the obtaining of oxygen? So what is the main advantage of the terrestrial organisms? What is the main advantage of the terrestrial organisms over the aquatic organisms? This is the question. Now you try to answer it. So this is a very simple question, because amount of air that is present, the amount of dissolved oxygen that is present in the water is very less, that is, it is less than 1%. Therefore aquatic organisms to have to breathe, the rate of breathing and respiration is faster in aquatic organisms, and whereas terrestrial organisms there is a sufficient amount of oxygen, therefore the breathing is not faster. Okay, and they have a sufficient amount of oxygen. Since the content of oxygen is very high, the organisms do not have to breathe faster. Okay. So what are the different ways in which the glucose is oxidized and provide energy? We have seen all the different processes. So glucose in cytoplasm, pyruvates. So you can get a clear understanding. Okay. And how is oxygen and carbon dioxide transported in the body? Oxygen is transported in the body with the help of the different kind of hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is considered to be the respiratory pigment, wherein it helps in transporting the oxygen to the places wherein the deficient of oxygen is actually is there. So hemoglobin pigment present in the blood gets attached to our 4 oxygen molecules that are obtained from breathing. This is oxyhemoglobin, and the blood becomes oxygenated, and this oxygenated blood is then distributed to all the parts, all the cells by heart. So just the entire process you have to explain from the heart, everything. Okay, carbon dioxide is produced and cellular respiration of deoxygenated blood, and it has hemoglobin has less affinity for carbon dioxide, it has more affinity for oxygen gas. So carbon dioxide is mainly transformed in the dissolved form, that is in dissolved form in the blood. Okay, carbon dioxide, oxygen is going in the blood and oxygen is going here. You can get an understanding about it. So if you see this diagram as well, so during the process of respiration, wherein alveoli is containing some blood capillaries, so during that time the alveoli is filled with oxygen gas. So oxygen gas is coming to the blood and carbon dioxide is entering the alveoli. So oxygen gas will flow through the blood vessels, and it will enter into the cells, and water into the cells, and during that time the carbon dioxide and oxygen water molecules which are present in the cells will come out, and this process again cyclic, the host substances again will enter. This is a very good diagram which you can actually mention. So how are the lungs designed in the human beings in order to maximize the area for exchange of gases? So they have alveoli which helps in increasing the surface area for the exchange of the gases. Then the inhalation process, so lungs will have so during the inhalation process, lungs ribs are being lifted and diaphragm is flattened. Okay, and during the exhalation process, the relaxation of ribs and the diaphragm is actually taking place. Okay, so there are some numerous alveoli which will increase the surface area for the exchanging of the gases, which is making the process of respiration more efficient as well. Okay, now we got an understanding, right, about all the different processes that are involved, and and everything, right? So if you have any doubts also, you can mention in the comment down. You can just comment down so that I'll actually try to answer them as well. And so the PDF for this lesson, I forgot actually to mention the PDF of the before session as well. So I'll try to do that as well. I'll try to keep the PDF of this session and the previous one in the link that is mentioned, so that you can get an understanding. In the comment down also, in the comment section also, I'll try to pin it out so that you can understand. You can also revise all these concepts once again. And after this, we are going to see the transportation in animals, transportation in plants. That is very important. And after that, finally, we're going to see, we'll solve some in-text questions, then excretion process. Excretion also, it is a quick, you can complete it quickly. And after that, we'll solve these questions. You can actually get these questions in online also. Just we are going to have some glance. After that, we'll start with the social. Okay. After social, we'll move on to social. Try to let's stick to social first, because plants and so physics actually requires a lot of factors. That means it requires a pen. Therefore, when I actually get a pen, as soon as I get a pen, I'll try to upload the videos on the basis of that. Okay. Okay. So that's it. I think we got a clear-cut understanding, right? What is actually the different processes which are involved here, the process of respiration and everything, right? If you have any doubts, also try to comment down also. And this session's PDF, I'm going to upload it in the description as well as in the comment section as well. Okay. So that's it, and I'm going to end this live stream, and hope you all are fine. Just be happy, and also learn the concepts and views as well. Learn and everything. Okay. That's it I would like to tell. Okay. And if you have any doubts, try to mention it, and many questions also we are going to solve. Okay.